do so many people move here to Silicon Valley? A lot of it is driven by the history of venture capitalism here in the Bay Area. Just some fundamentals of how this venture capitalist startup environment has changed, and that has in turn affected the housing costs. So when a VC or several VC firms get together to create a portfolio of firms in a given fund, they'll go to various sources and they'll pull together several $100 million. They'll invest in maybe 20 firms or perhaps 30, and they'll dole out the money a bit at a time to each of these firms. And what these VCs have learned is that in the world of tech, and I have to emphasize tech because not many other worlds have it, it is possible to have explosive growth. This only happens in tech. It doesn't happen in agriculture. It doesn't happen in a bunch of other industries. That's why VCs are tied to tech. Tech has explosive growth. When they invest in this portfolio of 20 or 30 firms, experience has shown about 5%, if they do their job right, 5% of these firms will shoot to the moon and give a fantastic return. That return is so much, it'll pay for the 95% that didn't go anywhere. That's what those VCs are after. Those 5% really make it, and the other ones don't. Now, these startups, they have to be fast and flexible, and you want really motivated employees inside this firm. You want the kind of people who are going to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go, aha, I figured out the answer to the such and such problem. And one way to get that level of dedication is to offer pre-IPO stock options to many employees, not just the founders. Highlight that. I just want to go into a brief story. Some 22 years ago, the New York Times did a profile of this family that had just bought this $2 million mansion in the mountains here in the Bay Area. Back then, you could buy a mansion for $2 million. You can't do it anymore. And so the journalist is interviewing the husband, and he asks the husband, well, what's your work history? And the husband said, well, I started off at Hewlett-Packard and working there fine, but my career was not shooting to the stars, so I left HP. I went up to startup 1, startup 2, 3, 4, and 5. Every one of those startups, my salary was always lower. My stock options were higher. Every single one of them died. And then the guy said, I would have been better if I'd stayed at HP. So the journalist asked, well, how did you buy this $2 million house? Well, my wife was the first stockroom clerk at Cisco. That was his answer. Now, a stockroom clerk is typically one of the lower people upon the corporate ladder. But 22 years ago, when John Chambers was running Cisco, he gave stock options to everyone, including the stockroom clerk. And they bought that $2 million house from her stock options. And it is that richness, that is the lure that drives people to the Bay Area.